Yes, Bill, can you hear us?
Yep, thank you.
Good morning and welcome to San Juan County Council's Tuesday, July 7th, 2020 meeting of our regular scheduled County Council meeting. I now call the meeting to order. If we all could rise. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Real quickly, so everyone who is calling in from home, you can join this meeting or watching me. You can join this meeting 360-370-0599-441250 is the password. There's also a live stream available via YouTube, and it's on our county agenda. All right, so thank you very much. Good morning. I'd like to do a Coastal Salish acknowledgement. Let us acknowledge we reside on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have taken care of these islands since time immemorial. We don't have any excused absences, and just for the record, Mr. Watson and Mr. Stevens are both in remotely on Skype. Both of you had an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Yes.
I would entertain a motion for June 29th, please.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the meeting minutes for the San Juan County Council meeting of June 29th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes for June 29th, 2020. Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the meeting minutes for the San Juan County Council meeting of June 30th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes of June 30th, 2020. Any questions or comments? Without seeing any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Have you both had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda for the San Juan County Council meeting of Tuesday, July 7th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda for July 7th, 2020. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carries 3-0. Mr. Stevens, is it possible to have you give us a brief description of the correspondence? I think that's from you, correct?
Yes, and I have to correct it somewhat. I received, as a member of the Orca Task Force, this correspondence to sign on about the National Marine Fisheries Service is trying to give a pass to the Navy, assuming that if they take a whale by accident during training, that's okay, that it won't affect the population, the southern residents. And I believe, I think, as we all know, they're already at a critical mass of numbers. However, the letter that, so this letter is to ask the National Marine Fisheries to take a second look at this and put some sort of safeguards into the Navy training to protect the orca. However, this letter that I forwarded to you, because I skimmed it, is more geared around task force members. And I could get a second, different one I was working on that would be more from our council, if that's what council would like to do.
Mr. Watson?
Yeah, I'm perfectly willing to authorize Mr. Stevens to modify, adapt the current letter to a council letter and submit it on our behalf.
I concur. And Mr. Stevens, would you like to sign it? Would you like all of council to sign it, or would you like me to sign it when you're finished?
I think all council, we could affix our signatures as we've been doing.
What is the timing on this?
We have some timing. It's a couple weeks away, but I'll get it out to you right away. And I apologize, I don't have it in front of you today.
No problem. So is it okay if we move it to next week's, just move it to next week's agenda, or you want us to vote for approval and just sign it at our leisure?
If we could vote for approval, that would be better, because I'm not 100% on the date. So
So, Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I move that we authorize Councilmember Stevens to modify the draft letter as suggested, and that we approve its submittal to the Northwest Marine, to the Marine.
National Marine Fisheries.
Thank you, National Marine Fisheries, from the entire council.
Second.
Motion and second to a modified letter to the National Marine Fisheries, as will be presented by Mr. Stevens in the future. Any questions or comments? Mr. Stevens, just one thing. Thank you very much for doing all of this work. I know it's a lot of extra work above and beyond what we do from council and in this current pandemic. So thank you for the extra stewardship you're doing to help keep our environment and the region safe. So thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Stevens. Thanks for the work. All righty. Is there any, have you guys had a chance to look at the agenda? Is there any issues?
No issues for me.
No issues.
All right, moving on. So right now I have, looks like there's 4 people who are called in as attendees. Is there anyone who would like to provide public comment or public access at this point? Again, you have 3 minutes. State your name. All right, I'll read numbers really quick. Well, I just removed someone, sorry. Please come back in and I'll let you speak if you want to. Outlook in, I think it's Sarah Ferris. Do you have any comments?
Hi, this is Sarah Farish calling from Orcas Island. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have any public comment?
I'm just calling to hear what you have to say today. Our latest update on the county's plan with coronavirus, and just to continue to let you know that the lodging partners and the Outlook Inn and the New Leaf Cafe are working really hard to keep our community safe and continue to keep the numbers down in San Juan County. So I'm here to listen, and I'm just, as always, so grateful for all of your service through this really difficult time. So thank you. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much. I have a wireless caller, 360-378-7689. Would you like to provide public comment?
This is Laura Saccio with Earthbox Inn and Spa and Bird Rock Hotel. I'm surprised you don't have my telephone number memorized at this point. But I would just like to reiterate what Sarah said, that we're working really hard to keep the safety of this community in our minds all the time, and we could use whatever help and support we can get from the community at large. We are at 30% occupancy for July, well under 50%, and certainly well under our normal 95% occupancy for this summer. And we're at 18% for August, when we would normally be 100%. So we can use all of your help and support just so that we can make it through till next year. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think there's another caller, and I apologize that I inadvertently, when I was trying to let you speak, I think I kicked you from the meeting. So I think you're back on, and that number is 378-3277.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Rick. This is Deborah with the San Juan Islands Visitors Bureau. So I'm on today to listen to the weekly COVID report, as well as to let everybody know who's listening that we initiated the suspension of all of our advertising yesterday morning following the governor's announcement on Thursday afternoon. We alerted the county council and health officials yesterday as to this effect, as well as sent out a local press release. And as you've heard from Laura and Sarah, it sounds like this was a difficult but necessary decision to make. We've been doing our best to balance a soft opening with community concerns for safety, and we all thank you, the council and health officials, for all of your hard work and tough decisions you've been making, and we will continue to monitor COVID, your health and safety updates regarding COVID. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and again, I apologize for kicking you off the call for a second there. Sorry about that. All right, I don't see any other calls. Just on process, again, if you're calling in, if you could please mute yourself so we don't have any background noise. I'm going to mute the callers that we have now. In the future, too, I'm going to read a bunch of emails, but council gets emails almost every day or every day, and I would assume we all read them. If you would like your comments that you email to either Ingrid or council to be read, please put in the subject line "to be read," which one of these folks just did. So if you can in the future, that would be great. I'm going to read, I think I have 9 emails. I'll make them quick. First one's from Jamie Hance. Thank you, Council and Dr. James, for working to balance the economy and the health. I want to remind you that some of the nasty comments you might have seen online from a select few do not speak for the majority of Island residents. Most of us are very grateful for the work you have done so far, and you all have our votes and support. I would like to continue to urge Council and Dr. James to increase 50% lodging capacity, consider 75% or higher. We are seeing nearly 100% mask compliance in island businesses, and guests are overwhelmingly respectful and understanding. The 50% restriction has been in place for over a month with only a few cases. Island businesses have shown effectiveness of the safety protocols. Jamie Hance. The next one, I might not get through all of it. It's kind of long. It's from Frederick Dowell. In regards to the upcoming resolution titled San Juan County Resolution Affirming Commitment to a Safe and Inclusive Community, I wholeheartedly support it and hope that Council moves to adopt the resolution as part of making San Juan County a more safe and inclusive community. I ask for the naming of Pickett Lane, which lies on the southern end of San Juan Island and connects Cattle Point Road to South Beach. I believe it is maintained by the county. It is used frequently by locals and visitors alike. It is offensive and has no place in our community. And on the same point, I've gotten another letter regarding Mount Pickett on Orcas, similar comments. If not known, George Pickett decided to betray his position in the U.S. Army to fight for Confederacy and defend the rights for white Americans to own black persons as slaves. If being traitor and a defender of slavery is not enough, he also committed a war crime by hanging 22 North Carolina and instead supported U.S. troops. Renaming the lane would only involve replacing one street sign and changing the name on online mapping services. As for possible renames, some of the residents have already affixed a sign to the street saying Tubman. I wholeheartedly support this suggestion. I do understand that since the road is a major access point to American Camp, part of the San Juan Historical Park, that there might be desire to rename the relating to the theme of American Camp. Relating to the theme of the American Camp, in that case, I suggest Roberts for Henry Martin Roberts, who is also stationed American Camp, was from a notable abolitionist family, designed fortifications in the encampment, a notable American military engineer, and created modern parliamentary procedures known as Roberts Rules of Order. I personally think the best course of action would be to rename the road with a suggested name from a language and history experts from Lummi or Samish nations. That way, the new name could reflect both historical and present importance to the South Beach area, to the native peoples of this place, and also give a public example of native languages of this place. Thank you for your. I thank you for the time, Council. And I hope they move to help create a more safe, inclusive community. I do think I read that last week, so I apologize for the redundancy. Next one is from George Dimich. I apologize if I said that wrong. I disagree with the decision to move forward at this time. There is not one life that is worth nor equal to the survivability of any business in this county. My vote will reflect that. George Dimich. George Post. Dear board members, just a short note to let you know I object to the ads on NPR for visitors to come to San Juan's. I ask that you stop them respectively. George Post. Dan Gottlieb. Excuse me, my apologies if I messed that up. Hello, I am the owner of Salish Real Estate. COVID has hurt my business regardless of what part of deadly pandemics do you people not understand? Please return the county to phase 1 immediately. Let's see. I think this is from Michael Johnson. I could be wrong. Forward COVID-19 update, July 1st newsletter of the John Hopkins Center for Health Security. I'm not sure how to read this. Let's see. County councilors, please read the health experts warning and withdraw application for phase 3 opening in our county. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs. It's really long. U.S. response: as a daily COVID-19 incidents continue to increase in the United States, senior health experts warn that This could be only the beginning of a much larger epidemic. U.S. CDC Principal Deputy Director Dr. Ann Shushat commented this week that SARS-CoV-2 is spreading too rapidly and too broadly for the U.S. to bring it under control. The current rate of transmission is exceeding contact tracing and isolation capacity, which is facilitating further community transmission. During his testimony to the U.S. Senate Health and Education Committee, Dr. Anthony Fauci projected that the United States could soon face more than 100,000 new cases per day. He also noted that some states have progressed through their recovery plans too quickly, disregarding key metrics, federal guidance in an effort to quickly resume social and economic activity, and that these efforts are contributing to increased transmission. Following an overall decrease in daily incidents from mid-April through end of May, the United States is now constantly reporting higher daily incidents, more than at its peak in mid-April. The United States daily incidents more than doubled since June 9th, up from 20,338 new cases per day to almost 41,000 yesterday. Okay. I'm going to stop there. Another one from Michael Johnson. Council members, I write to ask you to withdraw the county's application to the state for phase 3 opening. We lack sufficient testing, even of essential workers. As of last week, my Orcas postal clerk had not been tested ever. We don't have accessible emergency medical care and transport for county residents, plus 6,000 tourists per day. 2018 numbers. We don't have the capacity to track local contacts of infected people who have left the island. We don't have the capacity to quarantine suspected cases who cannot quarantine themselves. Please widely publicize that wearing a mask is always required indoors at businesses, is required outdoors if less than 6 feet from others, and farther when jogging, bicycling, or otherwise strenuous breathing. Please publicize serious requests to county residents to self-quarantine when arriving from the mainland. There's a whole couple pages of links for stuff. Thank you for that. Council members and Mr. Tompkins, this is from Heather Immore from Orcas. The New York Times today, as cases surge, it's clear many governors underestimated the virus and rushed to reopen too soon. Our correspondents write in analysis. They should add county council members to that list. You are doing all of us a grave disservice. Tourists will make us sick and are driving us indoors to huddle in our homes and wait for them to leave our island. Listen to public opinion. Your job is to enact the will of your constituents, not to enact your own. Heather Immore, Orcas Island. Another one from Heather Inmore. Council members Mr. Tompkins and Ms. Wygant, go into town, go into East Sound, and tell us who live here that the health of the island communities is your number one priority right now. I would like to see how you manage it. Go into town today or tomorrow. See the results of your decisions that you're supposedly making on behalf of the county as a whole. Federal and state officials are begging, and that's their word, not mine, people to stay home this weekend. And you, all of you, are encouraging people to come here from all over the country. You are encouraging the spread of the virus that kills people. Council members and county health officials, shut down the vacation rentals at the very least, really limit them, prioritize rentals owned by people who actually live here year-round, enforce virus protocols, really go out and see for yourself. Heather Immore. Richard Clark, I think it's San Juan. I'm sure you're aware that indoor dining at restaurants was recently identified as the chief source of infections, and the crowds of tourists without masks or social distancing are carousing at Indian Island off Main Street. I guess he's in Orcas. Main Street in East Sound and at Buck Park in East Sound. If you are not, you are now. I hope you meant what you said when you caved to the tourism industry and applied for phase 3, viz. That you will move San Juan County back to 2 when cases increase, as they surely will. I also note that certain people voting in favor of phase 3 have blatant conflicts of interest with respect to things like movie theaters. I think I read that one last week too. The last one is from Richard Clark again. Let's see. Please see my message below. There's a Miami Herald and a Como News saying, Dr. James, I think you're aware of the crowds of tourists in Friday Harbor not wearing masks and of the Sheriff's Department's apparent refusal or inability to enforce the mask requirement. These items were brought to your attention on Facebook recently. I understand that you have more pressing issues to deal with than reading social media posts. I really hope that Wiseman and Olympia rejects the San Juan County's phase 3 application. Let the tourism industry wait to reopen fully. Nothing is more important than the health of our citizens of San Juan County, whom you are charged with protecting. I did an informal survey of Orcas Island lodging and restaurants. I saw only 3 lodging places, Doe Bay, and parentheses, which goes to remarkable lengths to keep its guests and Orcas Islanders safe, such as 48-hour pauses between guests, 5-night minimum stay, no indoor dining, pickup or delivery to your cabin of meals, discouraging travel to East Sound, and any interaction with locals. Rosario Resort and Turtleback Farm Inn, which is not reopening until the fall of 2020. Actually, it's not true. Rosario's has opened. That take any meaningful measures to limit outbreaks beyond the stepped-up cleaning, et cetera, that is common sense and is presumably taking place in all Orcas Island lodging establishments, but mentioned only a handful of websites. Virtually all other lodging places on Orcas are not pausing between guests or imposing any meaningful minimum stay requirements, both of which are recommended by the hospitality industry of America. A few lodging places have 1-night minimum stays. Orcas Hotel and Old Trout Inn. Restaurants in East Sound, Olga, Deer Harbor, and Orcas are for the most part open for business as usual, with only Doe Bay Resort, Luna's Cafe, Wild Island, Catkin Cafe, and Olga, and Orcas Hotel limiting to takeout orders. Orcas Hotel has also has outdoor dining. I know you were under pressure from the tourism industry to reopen, but wouldn't it have been appropriate for you to have included some of the key safety measures mentioned above in San Juan County Phase 3 application? All right, well, that's all I have in written information. I'm going to ask one more time, is there anyone else on the line who would like to provide public comment or public access? Who's called in? All right. Without seeing any, I'll move on to our public hearing. Mr. Huntemer, are you on? I think I see you. You have a public hearing to adopt an ordinance regarding amending official county road speed limits map. Colin Huntemer, County Engineer.
Well, good morning, Council. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So this morning before you is a public hearing to set the speed limit for County Road number 157 Missing Mountain Road. Council is probably aware that Missing Mountain Road was opened ceremoniously last week under the presence of Bill Watson. And we now need to establish a lawful maximum speed. Speed limits are set by County Council, and a few years ago the County Council adopted an ordinance that set speed limits using official maps. So the only amendment before you and for public comment today is to amend the map for District 1. This is the map for District 1 to include the new road, County Road 157, Missing Mountain Road. It is identified here as green. With a maximum speed limit of 25 miles per hour. The road is open to traffic now, the signposts are up now, and so by passing this ordinance, it would mean that the speed limits now posted would be lawful and enforceable. Again, so there's no other changes proposed on any of the roads in San Juan County, just the addition of Missing Mountain Road. I guess the only thing I will add is that the ordinance itself that council will consider adopting is slightly revised than the one that's in the staff report. I worked with John in the PA's office yesterday, and he has amended it slightly to form, and I have sent it to Ingrid. I believe, Ingrid, you received this yesterday?
Yes, I did, and I distributed it to the council.
Great, thank you. So John was able to amend the ordinance that was in your staff report so that we only have to change the one map for District 1 as opposed to all three maps, which was the original form that you received. So the amended one from John yesterday is more elegant, and it only amends District 1's map, and it better describes the single chain we are proposing. The ordinance has a small scale version of the map that will get included with council records. But because these are large maps, at some point council will be asked to sign the bigger version, and that bigger version will be posted online and of course be kept at the Public Works office. I have no further, I guess, to share with you, since social distancing keeps us apart. This is a picture from the road opening. Those of you who could not attend, many representatives from the town and the council were there. Town council, we had adjoining property owners, the port, and a few interested citizens, and of course Bill on the scooter riding through the rain.
They made me do it.
Are you licensed for that scooter there, Bill?
They made me do it.
Oh, funny.
Kept these from our risk manager.
Well, congratulations for having this project open. Hey, Colin, can I ask you a quick, what is 157, by the way?
Yeah, that sign does not exist. Somebody put that on there.
Okay, just want to clarify. Colin, can I ask you a process question?
Yes.
So our charter requires a 3-touch for everything we do for an ordinance. And I don't recall, I know we had you on the agenda at one point, but we didn't get to it. Is that, I don't know if John Kane's there, but I think, I don't mind going through this public hearing, but we may have to continue it twice. Is there any timing on this?
There is no, you certainly, well, we can go through the public hearing motions today. I apologize. I'm not aware of a requirement to have a public hearing 3 times for an ordinance. And
it's in our charter.
No, it's not. You don't have to have the public hearing 3 times. You have to touch it 3 times. So normally we touch it twice and have or at least have 1 touch and then a public hearing, or 2 touches and then a public hearing.
Okay. So my recommendation today would be to hold the public hearing, and then pending council's and public comment, you could either extend the hearing, and then you can consider this at the next 2 council meetings at your convenience and adopt it.
John Kane, are you on the phone, or Randy?
It's totally like a funny part.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Colin, I have a question for you. So you're establishing the speed limit for Missing Mountain Road. If it isn't done via ordinance, what is the default speed limit on a county road?
Undesignated roads are regulated by RCW 4661-400, and I believe.
This is Randy.
Hi, Randy.
35 miles an hour is the standard speed limit.
I believe that's correct.
So Randy, my question is, so we're in a public hearing and this is a first touch. Can we approve it today? It had been on prior agendas, but we weren't able to get to it.
It's your rule in order to provide adequate ability for you as the council to consider matters and not for anything, and not to be surprised by anything. That's the purpose of the 3-touch rule. And it also provides some information to the community as well to know what you're thinking about. Since it is your rule and it's not a state rule, you do have the ability to relax that rule. But as Councilmember Jamie Stevens has said, you've been pretty good about following this rule. So my advice to you, I don't think that there's any strong difficulty, is to apply the rule.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Watson or Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions regarding Colin or Mike?
No questions from Watson.
I have one. So, Colin, congratulations. I think 10 years ago, I was running on getting this road done. So, congratulations on getting it done. How did you come up with it? I'm just curious. How did you come up with the 25 miles an hour versus 35?
Strong consideration was taken into account the adjoining speeds on Pearpoint Road and Turnpoint Road. It's generally a good idea to have a consistent flow and pace of traffic. We also drove the road several times, me and others, to understand a level of comfort and safety. So the geometry of the road takes into account, but also as you get closer to town, the prevailing speed of the joining roads is also important. So Pearpoint Road is according to 25, so you're turning into another road that's 25. There is a small portion of Turnpoint Road that's 35, but that quickly gets reduced as you go into town, and I believe 20 miles per hour along Warbass.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Watson, you said you don't have any questions?
No questions from Watson.
All right, at this point, we will go into the public hearing or the public comment section of this public hearing to adopt an ordinance regarding amending official county road speed limit map district number 1. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to provide public comment or have public access regarding the speed limit on the new road? I will ask again, is there anyone who's on the phone who would like to provide public comment or have public access regarding the speed limit for the new road as presented? All right, without hearing any, council, I would entertain a motion for a continuation of the public hearing. I think it's important. While I don't have any issues with this whatsoever, and I think it's a pretty simple public hearing, it's my apologies. I didn't catch the fact that we hadn't met until we met today. But I would feel more comfortable if we continued this public hearing to July 14th.
Mr. Chair, I move that we continue the public hearing to adopt an ordinance regarding amending official county road speed limit map District 1 to July 14th, 2020 at 9:15 a.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing with the right to reopen comments, which I didn't say before, but I'm going to add that. If that's all right, Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yep, fine.
Great, thank you. To continue public hearing to adopt an ordinance regarding amending official county road speed limit for map District 1 to July 14th at 9:15 a.m. in Friday Harbor. Any other comments or questions? Without seeing any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Colin and Mike, I apologize for continuing this on. It's not a big deal, but it's important for us to follow the rules that we set for council. My mistake for not having this twice prior to this. Thank you, Colin, very much. And congratulations on having the road open.
Thank you, Council. I encourage you to drive it when you have the opportunity.
And thank you to the town of Friday Harbor for their assistance and patience with the county for getting this road completed. Our next public hearing is to adopt a limited tax general obligation bond ordinance, which was continued from June 30th with Mike Thomas and Ron Peterson. Are there any dates or?
Yeah, I can provide you with a short date update, but first I'll say that staff will ask council to continue the bond ordinance hearing for another week A similar story to what I indicated last week. So we thought we had a little better timing on this. We apologize for being a little bit bifurcated on our effort here. But with respect to the bond, of course, it's for financing of the emergency radio communication system. Islanders Bank has let us know that the offer tendered on the bond is good till the end of the month, and we appreciate that. And so that's our backdrop. Last week, there were several meetings among staff and with Rock Island regarding 2 agreements that are needed to purchase the system that we'd like. Mr. Watson joined us for one of those meetings. I appreciate his input on the project. I have a meeting at 2 today with Codan to further talk about the project. So why I ask you to push the bond forward another week, I want you to know that staff is working with the vendors to try to perfect the agreements to the satisfaction of the county and the prosecutor's office. So thank you for your patience.
Mr. Thomas, I have just one thing. I assume the answer is yes, but has staff reached out to the fire departments in Rock Island and the vendor on the process that we're going through to move this forward?
Yeah, so Dave Halloran is in contact with the fire chiefs weekly, so he keeps them up to date. And then, yeah, like I said, we have talked with Rock Island and Codan, the vendor, frequently on the process and the changes that we need.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Watson?
None from Watson.
I'm sorry, I did have one comment. Thanks, Bill, for sitting in on that, because you do have more expertise than either of us. So thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for bringing that up. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to provide public comment regarding adopting a limited tax general obligation bond ordinance, which is a continuation from June 30th? Is there anyone online who would like to provide public comment or public access at this point for this public hearing? Without seeing any, I will close the public comment section of this public hearing. With the right to reopen, I will ask council to do a continuation to July 14th at 9:15 a.m. in Friday Harbor.
Mr. Chair, I move we continue the public hearing to adopt a limited tax general obligation bond ordinance to July 14th, 2020 at 9:15 a.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to have a continuation originally from June 30th to July 14th at 9:15 a.m. in Friday Harbor to adopt a limited tax general obligation bond ordinance. Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments? Without seeing, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much for the continuation. I'm looking forward to having this project wrapped up, and just for the public listening, us continuing this one more week doesn't mean this project isn't going forward. We're just working to get all the details and the contracts put together. So thank you very much. Our next discussion item is COVID-19 coronavirus emergency response update. And I will look to Kyle Dodd. Are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. Kyle Dodd, Environmental Health Manager, serving as Incident Commander of County's COVID response. Situational update this morning. The case update statewide, we are up to 37,424 cases total in the state. Over the last 4 days, the average new daily case total has been around 700. So we're adding quite a few new cases per day. Very similar to how that ended up toward the end of last week when the governor announced all counties were being halted from moving in between phases. Where we stand locally, we are at 19 positive cases. and we've performed a total of 1,980 tests on county residents between our county testing effort and our community partners, our clinics and hospitals. Our new case, number 19, we were notified, as has been typical, on the weekend. We were notified on July 4th of a new case on Orcus, and the case investigation interview started the evening of the 4th, as well as identification of close contacts of that case that evening as well, following into the next day on the 5th to ensure that both the contact was isolating and all of the close contacts were quarantining until testing can be completed and results obtained. And our team was working first thing yesterday morning to ensure that those individuals were being tested. So officially we are at 19 in the county. Those of you that routinely check the numbers that the state has published, the state is still showing us at 20. Again, that discrepancy is explained by the fact that one case has been attributed to our county based on the reported residency of the individual. However, they are currently residing and had been residing in King County for the majority of 2020, so there is no exposure risk to San Juan County. Our team continues to follow up with, I'm going to call them exposure notifications. So we have folks that have traveled here that return to their home state and become symptomatic and are subsequently tested. And if they are positive, then they notify our team. And we talked during last council's meeting of one of those notifications from Roach Harbor the weekend before. So our team was busily tracing down close contacts of that positive that had since returned to their home state. Several contacts were tested, as well as those in county and those that had returned to other states. And I'm here to report today that all of the follow-up testing for those close contacts were negative. We still do receive reports of positive cases that have been here, and our team busily follows up with whether it be a business that they were in or other locations, and if there are any potential close contacts that meet that definition of being within 6 feet of a positive case for greater than 15 minutes. We're following up to identify those scenarios and ensuring that quarantine and testing is performed as required. As I mentioned a bit earlier, on Thursday afternoon, after much awaiting on the outcome of our application to move to Phase 3, the governor announced that he was halting all counties from moving to the next step in the Safe Start plan. What that meant for us is that we are currently and will remain in Phase 2 until at least July 16th. So the halt will remain in place at least 2 weeks. And we're unsure what that means for us at this time. If after July 16th, they will just continue to review the completed application that we had submitted, or if we will need to reapply at that time. So we're waiting for more clarification around that. But the governor cited that that move was based on over 700 new cases that had been reported statewide. And we had heard the weekend before that he was pausing counties that were currently in phase 3 to move to phase 4, and we're unsure how that could affect others that were moving through other phases. And that became clear on Thursday that everybody was going to stay where they were for 2 weeks based on the total number of increased cases statewide. The same day on Thursday, the governor, who had initially instituted a face covering requirement for the county of Yakima, who has experienced significant outbreak over the last several weeks, he extended that statewide for all businesses. So everybody on this call knows that our health officer issued a health officer order back in May to ensure that face coverings are required in all businesses. And the governor instituted on Thursday a face covering order statewide for all businesses that goes into effect today. So starting today, statewide, everybody must wear a mask if they expect to get service in businesses. A quick update on our testing team. So you'll recall that we have one testing team that is remaining ready for ring testing. That is testing of close contacts that are identified around a positive case. And then also available for asymptomatic testing of essential workers from our county businesses. So under the current model, we are asking businesses to partner with us. We are providing the staff and the coordination of the testing event and the shipping, and we're asking businesses to pay for the cost of the test, which is $125 per test. So we have tested San Juan County businesses last week. We have an ORCIS testing event for businesses that have signed up this week as well. And that's the current status of that project. So I think with that, I think those are the updates since last council meeting. I can certainly answer any questions before I pass it off to Mark to walk through the metrics.
Council, any questions?
None from Watson.
Ms. Stevens?
I'm sorry, none from me.
Great, thanks. Kyle, my only question is there a little bit more information on the ORCIS patient?
Nothing that I can share in public session. It's again a case where an individual was tested as part of a medical screening and found that they were positive. We were notified right away, followed up with the case, and as has been customary, they're doing all the right things as far as have been staying put and not moving about freely in the community. So that's as much information as I can share on that.
Kyle, this is Dr. James. Could I just add that
please do. Very
few public, probably no public exposures. Really, there were family exposures, and to our knowledge at this point, it is not. The people were very responsible, very informed, and as many of our cases have been, these people did everything right with respect to the community. So I believe there is unlikely to have additional spread in our community, but that's still to be determined, of course. But people were isolating, people were doing all the things they should have done, and so I'm comfortable that I would be surprised if there were any further community spread.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. James and Kyle. Mark, are you up next?
Yes. Yeah, and I've shared my screen. Hopefully it's larger than what it's on mine. Is it full size in your screens?
Yes.
Okay. So my preview is very small so I'll walk you through, as Kyle said, the Washington State key metrics. This is the risk assessment data dashboard that the state has put together. You'll notice that the rate per 100,000 of newly diagnosed cases during the prior 2 weeks continues to tick upward. It's at 95.4. This is as of midnight on July 5th is when it was updated. So that is one of the issues that the governor and the Secretary of Health mentioned last week on why they paused applications statewide. You can see that again. I'm not going to go through everything here, but you can see the two metrics around hospitals are still being met statewide, which is good news. That means that we maintain or having a capacity within our hospitals to treat individuals. That is one of there's some good news there, showing that the percent of licensed beds occupied is meeting the value, as is the percent of licensed beds occupied by COVID-19 cases, both meeting that. If you want to look at the rate of newly diagnosed cases per 100,000, you'll notice that, as Kyle has mentioned, we're seeing an increase, particularly in Eastern Washington and in some of the Western Washington counties as well. You'll notice that the central core there at Eastern Washington all are over 75 or more, with the exception of Klickitat down on the Columbia River, are all over the 75 new cases per 100,000. And if you get into Yakima, they're at 550 cases per 100,000. Benton County is at 285. Franklin is at 727. So you can see significant outbreaks going on in that community. That kind of gives you a picture statewide. If you look at the percent positive, which is another case that we use, remember the goal is not having more than 2% positive. You'll notice that the majority of the state is trending above the 2% of individuals positive, with I would say kind of the bookends on Western Washington, the coast, including us in Island County, and some of the Eastern Washington counties being less than 2%. There are some data discrepancies. So if you look at the percent of licensed beds occupied, it's showing that 100% of the beds in San Juan County are occupied. We believe that this is a data reporting error. We're not aware that 100% of our beds are occupied in this in our county, and so this is part of the data system. There could be some errors in the reporting, and then if you look at the percent of licensed beds occupied by COVID patients statewide, you'll notice that with the exception of Yakima and Benton County, everybody is less than 10%.
Mark, could I just add that on the
Sure.
hospital beds, I did confirm with our hospital that is inaccurate. And so I called Marianne as soon as I saw that, and she confirmed that is inaccurate for us. It is accurate for Whatcom County, however. They are... my son works there. I called him. He said they have extensive hospitalization, partly pent-up demand and partly additional cases, but primarily just pent-up demand. So that is an accurate number in Whatcom.
Thanks, Dr. James. So looking further at the healthcare readiness charts, you'll notice, and remember, one of the goals early on with our response to this pandemic was trying not to overwhelm our healthcare system, which is what happened in New York and some other states. We continue to trend in what I would say a good spot. If you look over history, we've been averaging roughly, say, 60%. You see this big blank space. There had some data errors that they're trying to resolve to fix that. But out here in the latter part of June and early part of July, we still remain at the 60% level, which is good. So good information there. And then if you look at the percent of beds occupied by COVID cases, you'll notice that really since we entered June through where we're at now, we're averaging about 3% as far as number of licensed beds that are occupied by COVID cases. So some good news there as well. If you look at testing capacity, we keep looking to increase the amount of testing that we're doing as a public health system, with the goal of having at least 50 tests per every positive. We are trending upward from the start of the pandemic, but we're still significantly lower as a system across the state, and so we'll need to continue to work on that. If you look at the percent positive, and this is another measure. And so if you look here, where early on, when there was very limited testing, the majority of folks that were being tested were high risk, had all of the symptoms, and so expect more positive cases. Since that time, we have been trending downward, and we're not, we're at 5%. And 5% to range, whereas you go to some of the other states, they're seeing much higher positivity with their test results. And so I just want to spend a little bit of time looking at our region. I think it's important to look at our region. This shows you the rate of newly diagnosed cases with a week average. You can see that we went up, then down, then back up. And hopefully this gray line continues with the trend going down, but it's still quite high. But if we were to look at the counties in our region, and so I'm going to select Island County, you can see that they had a peak at the end of June, beginning of April, and have since have been below the 25. If I had to go to add in San Juan County, you're not going to see a lot of difference because we don't have very many cases. The same thing, trending below the 25. If we add in Skagit, and let me add in the other jurisdictions, Snohomish and Whatcom County, and Whatcom County is seeing an increase in cases. You'll notice that we, again, end of March, beginning of April, we were at over 100 cases per 100,000 in our region. We went back down, and we had a low of about 15 cases per 100,000. That has trended back up. It is in about 50 cases per 100,000. And hopefully this gray line, which these have not been all confirmed yet, continues to start to go back down. That's what we would hope is happening. Hopefully the mask requirement is going to assist that. And hopefully with all of the information that has been out in the general public, folks will start to maintain social distancing and to wear their masks, and we'll continue to see this trend line going down. So that kind of gives you a picture, a snapshot of what's going on within our community and within our region. I'm going to flip over to the other dashboard, and it looks at data, similar data, but it looks at it a little bit differently. These are the COVID-like illness and the hospitalizations. Again, you can see this flat line from about mid-May on, about 3%, anywhere from 3.5 to down into the 2.5% on the COVID-like hospitalizations, which is a good trend line. If you look at testing as a system, you've heard that we need to increase our testing. I have selected this is just for our region. You'll notice as a region, we have increased our testing. The percent positive has remained at about 3 to 4% when you hover over these things. And if you go back and early into the outbreak, we were up at 10, 11, 12%. And so we are testing more. And the percent positives are less, but still we're getting additional cases. If I was to select the entire state, you'll see a big jump in the amount of testing that is going on. Whereas early on we were, as a system, doing about 5,000 tests a day. Now we're approaching almost 15,000 tests a day. And again, the positivity rate is hovering about 5% now versus the 10 to 12% back early in the outbreak. And so just kind of gives you an idea that we are increasing testing as a system, probably not where we need to be as a system, but the rate of testing is going up, and the percent positives is staying down about 4.5% to 5%. So we are going to get more. Even if we remain at 4.5% to 5% positives, the more you test, potentially you're going to get more cases. Again, as the Secretary of Health said and the Governor said, the increase in cases all can't be attributed to increase in testing. We know that the rate per 100,000 in those jurisdictions we looked at earlier is going up, and so it is something that is a concern. I think as a system, we want to maintain and improve where we're at, and not go in the other direction. So with that, I'm going to stop and be happy to go over any additional data, pull up any additional information that the council may want to see, and answer any questions that council may have in regards to this information.
Mark, would you mind pulling up our local data? It looks like something has changed. If you could explain that. I mean, just the dashboard that we have for the county.
Oh, the internal dashboard?
While you're doing this. So, Brendan, are you planning on speaking on anything? Take that as a no.
So this is our internal dashboard, and it says no new cases with risk of transmission in San Juan County in the last 3 weeks, which is a little bit different than what the state's looking at. And so if we're looking back 3 weeks, we've had several cases, and there were potential risks for transmission. Therefore, we had it at the 75% to 99% instead of having no cases. And so that's what's changed in our response capacity tracking for the county.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
No questions from Watson.
All right, thank you. Is Brendan, are you on the line? Do you have anything you would like to add? Okay, Dr. James, is there anything you would like to add?
Just a few quick points, Rick. I believe the hospital data that looked like we were overwhelmed. I think what they're doing is, since most of the hospitalization capacity is actually in the Peace Health system, that they bled that over to say that the Peace Health system in Whatcom is full, and thereby the few beds we have are not really, they don't really account for much. So I think that's the reason that they indicated that we were full, because the place we if we did have a big outbreak, most people would go to, in fact, to Whatcom. The second thing is just to say that there is a new test out for home testing. It's very promising. It has a significant flaw, though, not to be too optimistic. So there is home testing now where you can send into LabCorp and get the kit sent to you and get it done. There are a couple issues about that. One is that it takes quite a long time. It would be probably a week by the time you actually got the result. And secondly, it's not really for asymptomatic people, which is what I would really hope that they would make available. It's really only for people with symptomatic disease. So a test a week late doesn't seem like a great idea. So you'll hear about that. It'll make a bit of a splash. I think it's not the cavalry coming over the hill on testing that we want and need. The biggest thing is that I think we're going to play whack-a-mole for the rest of the summer, seeing occasional cases and being able to control their spread as we've done so far. That's really contingent upon one fact, and we've seen people that are probably not very good at spreading the disease and not in circumstances of spread disease. We've been very, very fortunate Again, most of the people that have come here have been extremely responsible. I can't emphasize the importance of wearing masks. That source containment is what has allowed us to be as successful as we are. Unfortunately, there are about 2% of people that get infected are what are called super spreaders. They're responsible for about 20% of infections. We have not had one in our county yet. If we have one, that's probably going to push us up into significantly larger numbers and poses a real risk. And since it's only 2% of the people, 2 per 100 that we expect to see that in, we've had very few cases, and we were steering clear of that. But it could become a reality. It's just luck that we've been there so far. But as long as we get people to wear masks, whether they're a super spreader or not, they're gonna contain that disease in the mask and not spread it in our community. And I can't emphasize enough that our citizens have been extraordinarily responsible. Our policies have been, we had a mask requirement in place on May 15th, far before anybody else in the state, and it shows in our results. We have to do whatever we can to maintain that mask wearing culture, not only in our citizens where it's well established, but in our visitors. In the fall, I think we're going to switch to an entirely new phase of the disease. It is similar to influenza in a number of ways, and the most worrisome way is that if it gets into schools and if there is opportunity to spread in those schools, that it's going to cause an opportunity for amplification of the disease and much more widespread disease. We're not in the same circumstance we were when this first started, because we could look at isolated cases coming into our community from the outside. In the fall, we're going to see disease broadly dispersed in our country and in our state, and the opportunities for spread are going to be much different. There are going to be many more sources of potential infection. And as schools open, this is going to be a very difficult time, I think, for us. Schools, of course, are essential to parents being able to go to work. Education is important, of course, and that's the main function of schools, but they're also a place where kids can be safely go during the day where their parents work. I think the pressure to have schools open is going to be tremendous. I think the risk as well is going to be tremendous. I'm particularly disturbed by the state approving face shields as an adequate protection. There is no data to support that at all, none. There are 2 articles. One is a modeling study, the other is an opinion piece, and that's it. There is no evidence for their safety, and I would strongly discourage people from believing that face shields are an appropriate. We may have to have an order in our county not allowing them, because there simply isn't data, and the data we do have suggests that they are a definite risk. There are fortunately face shields combined with masks, basically a cloth that goes around them and reaches down to the body. Those would be an acceptable alternative, but a face shield in and of itself is not. Those are the kinds of things we're going to be faced with in the fall. Teachers and many others want to have those facial gestures to communicate with students. I think that's a very appropriate concern. I think a face shield by itself is an inappropriate response. Just a few highlights of what you can expect to hear in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions for Dr. James or other staff?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Mr. Watson?
I just wanted to follow up. I wanted to acknowledge Deborah's announcement that the Visitors Bureau has unilaterally suspended their advertising. I want to remind folks that pretty much all of us were under the assumption that we were moving to phase 3, and that the governor's pause sort of caught us off, all of us off guard a bit. So I want to at least acknowledge that they've suspended their advertising right now until we get clarity around if and when we move to phase 3. So thank you for that, Deborah, and the Visitor Bureau Board. I also want to remind for the record that people still think the Visitor Bureau is part of the county. The Visitor Bureau is an independent, private, members-based business organization. Think along the same lines as a Chamber of Commerce. And as such, they have their own board of directors, and they have the same rights and responsibilities and obligations and freedoms as any private business entity does. So the county does have a contract with them to do the county's destination marketing activities, but that's in addition to their existence as a private business entity. So I would remind citizens that that as a private business entity, they have certain rights that they're allowed to do. So anyways, thank you, Deborah, for that. And we'll all sort of wait and see what happens. I guess it's July 16th is the governor's pause is to at least July 16th at this point. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I want to acknowledge, recognize, and thank the team of county personnel and volunteers that are doing the ring testing and response testing. It's unbelievable that, you know, we seem to always get notified of new cases on the weekend, which puts our staff, you know, out in the field and working on the weekends. So I would encourage our managers and supervisors to make sure that our people are getting compensatory time off. They need time to recharge. They need time to de-stress. And we need to be taking care of our own folks too. So this council member, and I'm sure my brothers would agree, wants to express our appreciation, but also acknowledge that you need your downtime and make sure you're taking it. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to respond as we've been doing because of, I'll call it, battle fatigue. And then, obviously, everybody's efforts on this. Dr. James, appreciate your efforts. We'll continue to, monitor the situation going forward. I agree the state and national numbers certainly don't look promising. Well, I guess we'll do the best that we can do as we, try to manage our own little corner of the world. So thank you all.
Bill, could I just say that I very much appreciate the Visitor Bureau stopping the advertising. And with respect to the other circumstances, I actually I heard such different things about what was going on the ferry that I actually packed up my family and came to San Juan on the weekend. And one of the things I did was I donned an N95 mask and a facial covering over the N95 mask, and I walked the ferry. And there were 68 people not adequately protected sitting at the seats in the ferry, and that was extremely disturbing to me. The further I got, the more upset I felt inside, and the more at risk I felt. I almost came without an N95 mask, assuming there wouldn't be anybody there. And I was, of course, the facial covering protects other people. The N95 protects me. But there were 36 people with no mask at all. There were 32 people with their mask hanging off their ear or down around their neck or down below their nose. Oddly and interestingly, getting off the ferry, only of the walk-off people, there were only 2 that didn't have masks. All those other people were in cars. I didn't see a single one that coming off the ferry. I think we need to do more to educate people. There was an appropriate announcement that they weren't supposed to. They prefer people stay in their car. The ferry, they announced things correctly, and that they should, if they get out into that common space, be wearing a mask. But a significant proportion of people did not follow that. I think we need to do more in that respect. And because, again, if you stop it in the face mask, it's not going to get into our community. It's a simple, straightforward, easy thing that we just need to figure out a way to make that happen. Thanks, Bill.
Dr. James, on that note, I've already forwarded your email to John Vizina from Washington State Ferries regarding a stricter enactment or education of mask wearing on ferries. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah, I'm going to be reaching out directly to the governor as well. I think that's something that's his responsibility. It's actually his rule on the ferry, not mine. And we need them to help us there.
So, Dr. James, this is Mr. Watson. If you do, talk to the governor or his office, obviously, maybe this is an appropriate utilization of our National Guard forces to try to do the public education and I don't want to say enforcement, but let's say encouragement, and because they can just ride the ferries and provide service that way.
Well, I'll leave it to the governor to figure out how to do it, but I certainly am going to ask him for additional both education, and I think we need to ask him for enforcement of his rule on the ferries. I think there's risk on the ferry, and there's risk as well, once those people come into our community. But that initial education, the change in culture, we have a culture in the islands of self-responsibility that is well established. The information's there, the willingness is there. It's a cultural expectation. We need to share that for people that come and visit our community.
So, Dr. James, this is Jamie, and I think there's a false sense of security on the ferry because since they have every other booth and things marked off and large sections, I think some of those. I mean, you actually talked to them, but so I'm not going to say what's going on in people's minds, but I think since you're spaced more than 6 feet apart, other than your family or whatever, I think there's a false sense of security that they don't have to wear a mask. And second, if that was a full ferry, that means we probably had somewhere close to a little over 80% compliance because people either stayed in their car or were wearing a mask, which is encouraging. Not great, not perfect, but encouraging.
It was a full ferry, and that's my estimate too. I think it's probably less than 20% that were not being compliant. But it's still a significant number of people. Given our population, 68 people is a big number. Certainly, I also walked around town and did a bit of a survey to see what was happening both in Friday Harbor and at Roche Harbor. And Roche Harbor is doing a very interesting thing that I really think we need to think more about, seeing if there's a way we can do that other places. They have an information person, not an enforcement person, but an information person. And their strategy is not to say, you've got to do this. Their strategy is to say, help us stay open. And I think it's really different in terms of reaching out to people. You tell them, you're supposed to do this. If you say, please help us be open, really different message. And I think it's a wise and prudent approach. I think we should consider adopting what's been done at Roche Harbor is really to have people that do outreach by saying, please help us stay open to the public. And I think that's when you ask somebody to help you, that's really different than telling them what to do. And so I think that's a wise and prudent approach that we might consider adopting, having such people in other places. So that was my other experience, was looking. There are a significant minority of people walking around the streets, although it is a false security on the ferry because people are walking right beside them. They're clearly you clearly are closer than 6 feet by these people, and there's a fair amount of people walking around. But I do think we do need to get the governor to take some action and it's the first step in people making that transition to our community where we're very safe. It's our culture. It's what people here have embraced, and we need to find a more effective way to manage that, to inculcate our culture into these people as an expectation. And literally, the consequence will be that we won't be able to stay open. We don't get to make the rules. The virus makes the rules, and the virus says if you're closer than 6 feet and you're breathing on me, I'm gonna jump over there and be in your body. That's the rule the virus made. We don't get to choose about that. We have to accommodate that. And so mask wearing has got to be part of our culture. If Mark didn't share it, but IHME has a graph now showing what mask wearing does to the rates going forward, and it dramatically reduces the incidence of disease. I'd encourage you to look at that IHME site and look at the projections with and without masks. They're very significantly different. And we're on the right page in our community. We've been on the right page for months. We now need to bring the rest of our visitors into line with that if we expect to have visitors. And I think the businesses in our community really want that and really support that.
Mr. Stevens, did you have anything to follow up? Okay, you read it, but I got nope. Okay, got it.
Sorry, no.
Thank you. Dr. You have mentioned a couple times the people from the county to educate and inform folks. Is it possible to have you or Mark or Kyle or someone from that health group to formulate a really short paragraph on what that would look like?
Right. I've reached out to the chairman of the Board of Health to try to bring a proposal through the Board of Health to the council that would implement that. And I've had some initial discussions. I'll continue those, and I expect you'll see something very soon about that.
Okay, because I mean, I'm more than willing to consider looking at that if it's brought forward. Again, if we're suggesting things, then we need direction on how to implement it and who would do the work.
Right, exactly. And those are the things I'm talking with Dale about now, and we'll bring forward to folks. I mean, what I've learned in this is that I can write orders, but in fact, those orders have to be informed by a lot of other people before they get written. So I'm trying to get as much input as I can. And as I said, seeing the approach they have up at Roche Harbor was very, very helpful to me. I mean, the response of people is just completely different. And so I think that approach is a sound one. So I'm continuing to collect information and data, but I will be coming forward with a proposal about that through the Board of Health. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Watson, I wanted to thank you for the kind words that you mentioned regarding staff. I completely agree with you, and I think we're going to be in this weekly call for a long time, so I want to make sure that staff is staying safe and healthy and not burnt out. Mark and Dr. James, I would be very interested next week as we approach the 2-week mark from the governor on kind of a status update on where we are. I don't necessarily want to remove our application to phase 3, but I'd like to have us consider things that we could do in a even more modified way if the conditions aren't where we want them to be. So I'd love to have sort of a strategy meeting next Tuesday, or at least a gut check. Are we going in the right path, if that's possible?
Yeah, we could do that, Rick. And like I said, I think that I'll reach out to my contacts at DOH and try to get an idea of what their thought process are, if they're going to continue to extend the hold on applications and moving between phases, or what the plan is, so we can maybe have that discussion as part of our updated briefing here.
Okay, great. I mean, I don't necessarily mind moving to the phase 3. I'm interested in what we think the right move would be. I mean, the phase 3 portion itself is just the state's benchmark or guidelines. We can still define whatever we want within that. And so we made a decision a couple weeks ago, and the environment is different today, and it could be different on next Tuesday. So I just want to make sure that we're not in a vacuum in some of our decisions, and that we're thinking everything through as we move forward. Mr. Watson, did you say something?
Could I just add that it was unsurprising to me that the state didn't move forward. They were failing in 3 of the 5 areas they needed to carry forward in their own metrics. So I think it was appropriate for the state to pull back at that point. And if you look at the data that Mark presented, I think is a convincing argument for why that was a very prudent thing to do. And it also, because our risk is not just our risk is the state risk. I mean, we take what they bring to us, especially given that we're a tourist industry. So I think it was appropriate both that the states slowed down for the state's best interest, but also that it slowed us down, because that was the appropriate thing to do in facing those kinds of risks, not only at state level, but at the national level. I mean, the U.S. is the biggest outlier in the world in not managing this effectively. Tremendous failure. And that will impact us. So we just have to be prepared to, and I think we need to rethink our application. I certainly am going to, because circumstances are changing. And we'll just need to rethink it, as you said, Mark and Rick both said, we need to rethink this and make it appropriate to the time. I would be shocked if the state simply accepted our application that was 2 weeks old. I mean, you need to look at the current data. There are measurable standards we have to meet, and they will be at the time that we make application.
Great, thank you, Dr. James. Mr. Watson, do you look like you're about to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add something. Uh, so I just wanted to again reiterate, at least it's my understanding. So the fact that we are still in phase 2, which means our 50% occupancy order is still in effect for lodging providers, and that will remain at 50% until we actually move to phase 3. So I know everybody was sort of thinking we were moving to phase 3 and might have been anticipating that, but I've got numerous calls on questioning whether we were still at 50% or 100% or 75%, and it's my understanding that being at phase 2, then we're still at 50% occupancy for transient accommodations.
Your understanding is correct, Bill. And there has to be good faith on everybody's part, and I think our business operators, we don't have a big enough staff to go around and check on everybody. They have to do what's right and not just what's easy or convenient or optimal for themselves. And our community needs to expect that. We need, every community member needs to do what's right in this circumstance. And for our businesses, they're struggling. I know they're struggling. I get dozens of emails a day from businesses that are impacted by the rules that I make, and they're struggling. We've got to do everything we can for them, but we can't. We have to hold them accountable to the rules that we've set. No one can just fill up their places, and I don't think they are. If there is an outlier, I would rely on the business colleagues to tune them up. We need a level playing field in addition to following the rules that we've set.
All right, thank you. Mr. Watson, anything else? Mr. Stevens?
I don't have anything.
All right, great. Well, thank you all very much for an informative update and discussion. It is now 10:26. We are going to take a quick recess to 10:45. Thank you very much. We'll be back again at 10:45. Thanks.